Hey, how's it going out there, folks? Welcome back here to a Sunday, 11:48 a.m., June 22nd, 2025's date here. Latest activity shows 4.2 earthquake across the Japan area once again. Also a 4.7 here, southern end, towards the southern end of the Nankai Trough. Goodness, we've just been getting a lot of earthquake activity ramping back and forth here between these two regions, leading me to believe here that the Nankai Trough is probably going to see a decent sized earthquake or somewhere in the region very soon. There's just too much movement taking place here between these two areas. Let's go ahead and take a look here at the movement up here around Japan first, where, of course, yesterday a 6.0 came in. It's not like this is just the first earthquake and it's been quiet before then. No, we've had a number of earthquakes up here in this region over the last week, up and down the Kuril-Kamchatka, including a 5.9 the day before the 6-pointer. So good possibility here that we're looking at some larger movement, maybe not only along the Kuril-Kamchatka here, but also down, I'm thinking around the Nankai Trough, maybe around the southern end here towards Japan or towards the Taiwan area. I don't know if there's enough steam built up here for another big earthquake around the Japan Trench or not. Possible. Excuse me. Possible. A sneeze came out. All right. Very possible. Of course, 2011, we had that big old 9-pointer out there, the 9.1. That was into the Japan Trench here, the center portion. That, was a full rupture out here of the Japan Trench. So, I don't think we have enough steam built up. But as always, we could see some other smaller quakes out here like we always see, maybe some 6s or so. But main areas of concern right now are along the Kuril-Kamchatka. That's this bend area right here where the Japan Trench ends and the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench begins. That area sees a lot of large earthquake activity, and historically, 8s and even potentially a 9-pointer is not out of the question. And it's been a little while here since we've had any decent-sized movement along the Kuril-Kamchatka. The Nankai Trough down here, the last decent-sized rupture was an 8.1 back in 1944. Now, one segment here did not rupture. I believe it was section E over here. There's literally like 5 segments that they define the Nankai Trough as. And, the last sections were, I believe, 4 here, but left out this one. But either way, the regular reoccurrence interval here of large earthquakes could be getting close. It runs about every 100 years or so. Maybe sometimes a little less. It's a major subduction zone, and it's in a high strained area where the slip rate is quite high. If you look, potential accumulation rates, I'm sure, are around 60 to 100 mm. That's going to be this area right here across the southern coast of Japan. Up along the Kuril-Kamchatka, roughly about 83 mm per year. And that's actually quite a high slip rate for any area around the globe. So the time frame that it takes for a large amount of strain to build up to produce a large earthquake is, it doesn't take hundreds and hundreds of years or thousands of years in some low strained areas. So the Nankai Trough underneath quite a bit of strain right here. That's this region. We're seeing an earthquake swarm down south here. So we got earthquakes swarming south in this area, and then up north along the Kuril-Kamchatka. The general stress movement of the map shows where all that strain is heading off to, right in the northwest corner here of the Filipino plate. That's going to be this plate right here. And that is where the Nankai Trough sits. Current activity, I'm telling you guys, it's looking more and more likely that this thing should rupture soon. Not a whole lot of activity on it, of course. When it does, it's going to be big. We've had even some deeper activity back here prior to it in the Izu Trench, even a shallow one here. So this reinforcement further adding strain there into that subduction zone. It's a decent sized one, and when it goes, it can produce an 8.0 or greater quake, and they normally rupture in potential pairs, like section A and B, or C and D and E, and then A and B. It depends on which area is stressed the most. But I'm thinking here the main area is going to be back over here around E, because it did not rupture back in 1944. So this is a segment here that's overdue, so to speak, in terms of the next rupture. So that could trigger E, D, and C, and then maybe in a year or so we should see these sections rupture. We've covered this a lot in previous videos. I'm not going to go too much more in depth into it, but we got to watch that closely here, folks. A lot of movement up north, a lot of movement south, and movement here straight from the east, adding further strain against this area of that subduction zone boundary. Goodness, and it's a big one. It's coming up here, I think. So let's take a look here at the swarm of activity up along the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench. Two different swarms. The largest earthquake so far is going to be a 6-pointer there in Japan from yesterday. Prior to that, a couple days, there was a 5.9, same region. Bunch of aftershocks in there as well, of mostly 4 magnitudes, with the latest coming in right now for a 4.2. So earthquake activity is still continuing here overnight and this morning. No new swarming up north. It's mainly focused on this area and then the region down here across the south coast here of Japan, where they've had a number of 4s and 5s, and this is just one swarm of many in this location over the past few months. If we go back the last 30 days here, not a whole lot showing up here. We'd have to go back the last 3 to 4 months or so. And this area specifically has been swarming like crazy. In fact, if I remember right, they had a 7-pointer here last year. And don't forget, this is a region that the Japanese government here put out a mega quake warning for. They raised the possibilities here of a mega quake on that subduction zone because of all the activity that's happening around it recently. This was last year, by the way. And the amount of time that has passed, and due to the fact that Section E over here did not rupture during the last event back in 1944. So, there's certain areas here that are well constrained and built up for a large earthquake. But just in the last day, is that another one coming in right now? 11:32, 4.7. See, this is just bouncing back and forth between each other here literally within 10 or 20 minutes of each other. We're seeing an earthquake bounce up north and south, up north and south. I'm telling you guys, watch this area closely. That is primed. It's in a bad location there. When you see earthquake activity bouncing back and forth like that, adjustment is taking place and further strain is increasing in the region. It's just how much strain can the Nankai Trough here continue to hold without producing that big earthquake? We'll continue to watch that. Areas upstream here, the Kuril-Kamchatka northward, pretty quiet for now. I'm not seeing anything showing up on the USGS map. There's all the big-time obvious activity happening there around Japan in the last 24 hours on the globe. There's actually a lot more earthquake activity there in the southern end of the Nankai Trough there than what the USGS is showing. Quite a few 3s mentioning in there as well. So that's a bigger swarm than what the USGS is showing. I don't see a bunch of 3s up north here, but it's possible there could be some in there. Either way, X marks the spot there around the Nankai Trough. It's pretty obvious. Some deeper activity stirring up there around the Mariana Trench as well, northern end it looks like, with that 4.2. It's a pretty deep earthquake over there. 204 miles deep into that subduction zone, ever increasing the strain up here along the Filipino Trench. Move that out of the way. My mouse is not working for some reason. I think I need to change the battery on it. The rest of the area here, minimal movement across the Java Trench, Indonesia Islands area, but this is very common on any given day. What's not very common is this movement up here. Older activity, it looks like, around the Tonga Trench. Some deeper movement from yesterday as well. Not a whole lot of noticeable uptick in terms of earthquake activity around this region of the world today. New Zealand, some older movement from last night and this morning. Alaska 2.2 right now. Main focus, kind of pointing over there in that corner. Let's see what we got here for California. 3.1 earthquake, recent. Looks like this morning here. into the southern end of the Cascadia subduction zone, and this is not associated with a fracture boundary at the surface. This is associated with the subduction zone itself there, 14 miles deep into the Cascadia megathrust. It begins out here, right? And this plate, the portion of the Juan de Fuca plate, better known as the Gorda plate, it's a very small microplate here, being shoved underneath this region at deeper levels, right? That's how you get the volcanoes out here across the Cascades in Northern California. But that's down there, 14 miles deep, is up above the tremor level. But getting close to the strained region where the locked area is. So that's another area of a subduction zone we have to watch, folks. It's, 325 years since the big earthquake out there, the big old 9-pointer. But I am thinking here, and I talk about it a lot, is that we're probably going to see just a partial rupture down here. These partial ruptures occur in between major events, because major events happen on average between 250 and 500 years. Major event meaning the entire rupture of the Cascadia subduction zone resulting in a 9.0 or greater earthquake. Partial rupture here, mainly across the southern end. This is where a lot of strain builds up here because of the Gorda ridges. You got the strike transform boundary here, the Blanco fracture zone. All that generally adds more strain here across this area on the southern end. That's why these ridges are being formed. Separation of the seafloor, further adding strain, mainly across the southern end. So it's. I think we're coming up here on a potential partial rupture. Let me see here. I thought I had a map, but intervals. Wait, Cascadia. I'm gonna go timeline here. I'll have to bring me out a map or save one of these images here. I wonder if this Oregon Live. I think Oregon Live has that map. Yes, there it is. This is a map I'm looking at. When you account for the smaller earthquakes as well, the partial ruptures, these guys are stating here that average quake along the Cascadia is 246 years, which means we're way past that level. Way past that level. But that also, like I say, it includes the partial ruptures. So full ruptures, obviously a little bit, takes a little bit longer. When you include the partial ruptures, that brings the average potential there of 246 years. Again, we're way past it, and that's why I'm pointing towards maybe just a partial rupture of an 8.0, potentially greater, maybe up to an 8.5, 8.6 across the southern end of the Cascadia subduction zone. And if this is accounting for all the quakes there, small rupture and full rupture, partial rupture and full rupture, then we are coming up. And that's what we got to watch here. We got to watch the southern end here. It's been very active across this area recently. More so on this triple point boundary. There's a lot going on here, but it seems as though this area is easily able to potentially release strain in a way compared to this region up here that's continually building strain. But when it goes, it releases a much more powerful earthquake. Tremor activity has been quite amplified underneath this area as well, mainly across the southern end. So we got to account for a lot going on out here, folks. Our last, our last full rupture was 1700. These guys showing 315 years ago, but this article is 10 years old. Previous to that, back in 1468, 8.7. Now, more than likely, that's just a partial rupture. There's even another 615 years ago. Look at that. That's pretty close range there. 8.1, 8.7. That 8.7 may have been a full rupture, but 547 years ago to 315 years ago, that would put it awfully close there. But you see these partial ruptures. They do occur roughly in between each interval here of large ruptures. So in that case, we should be seeing something like this here soon. 8.3. I mean, if you look at the timestamps here and the maps, we're it doesn't stay empty here as a gap for long. Looks like back in well, this is a long time ago, 6,000 something years ago, till that was almost 500 years there of an interval. But if you look recently here in recent geological times, so to speak, the intervals are getting much closer. So we're coming up, folks, I think. I don't want it to happen, but we have to be prepared. I live out here in Northern California myself. I live just outside of Chico, so I'm not in the major hazard zone out here. We'll definitely get some strong shaking, but the potential for a devastating tsunami and an 8.3 out here would, oh man, it would not be good. So, and as I noted, the Cascadia. This is an interesting map, by the way. I know there's more to this. They had a decent article on it, but it looks like they may be having some website issues. But through projects.oregonlive.com and then maps, earthquakes /timeline, they have a lot of information there on the Cascadia subduction zone. And even though the information is out there, it's unfortunate. A few times that I've been up here along the coastline visiting the area, studying this area, I've talked to numerous people, and when you talk to them about earthquakes and the potential for damaging earthquakes, in their mind and what they've been taught is, yeah, that's going to happen in Southern California on the San Andreas Fault. Many people unaware of the potential lurking offshore here. I don't understand why, though. It blew me away that so many people were knowledgeable on the San Andreas Fault, but not informed on the Cascadia. Even though there's tsunami evacuation routes and whatnot like that throughout many towns out here, which is good. But yeah, you got to be informed on that. As soon as you feel strong shaking out there, you don't want to wait around for a tsunami to come inbound, because this land is going to drop. It's been building up here for quite a while. Let me see if I can show you a prime example up here on the GPS stations. Okay, this is a southern end of the Oregon coast, north of Brookings. Here's Brookings down here. This is near Bandon, Oregon. Beautiful area. I love Bandon. Up 101, beautiful drive, absolutely stunning. I love to go up there. But it sits at the southern end there of the Cascadia subduction zone, right? Right about here, and this is at the southern end where this area is rising, and it is. If we could go back till the date 1700 and look at this station right here. This is vertical displacement, right? This is the land going up. And that is because of this Cascadia subduction zone. This portion of the Gorda plate here is shoved underneath this region, but also at the same time, this area is kind of folding in on itself. This is the North American plate, folding in on itself downward, but also pushing up on this land. That's why we're seeing elevated uplift here. And that's acting as a spring, but eventually this tension that's built up out here will release in at least an 8.7 is what I can see far as the largest magnitude for a partial rupture. That is, it's going up. Any unusual upness that I see here, it just, well, actually it does look like it's been a little bit more elevated. Look at that red loop right here. Compared to years past, it's been almost double the amount of uplift that's going on out here. But again, if we were to go back to the year 1700, it would start off, from coming back down, and then it would go up. And it's just been going up. No telling how many MMs it's gone up. I'm not going to go count the 325 years at this level, but it's built up there. Some portions of the coast are going to drop quite a few feet. And that's bad. But what comes next is even worse, is the tsunami rushing in. So you got to watch these little things. It could happen tomorrow. It could happen right now. The thing is, look for key little events. Watching these maps, these GPS systems, tremor activity underneath the area, crustal quakes, All those are a telltale sign of what's going on underneath this area. So just be on guard, folks. There's so much happening out here right now. So we got that one. That's down into the Cascadia. Another one here from yesterday into the Cascadia. So that 3.3 is today. This one, the Cascadia does extend underneath here. A portion, just the extreme southern end. That's why we get tremor activity occurring sometimes underneath this region here of northern end of the Sacramento Valley. That's the extreme. That's as south as it goes, though. It doesn't go any further down. Washington and Oregon, not a whole lot going on up there today, folks. Bay Area, pretty quiet as well. Southern California, switch back here to the train so we can see the quakes a little bit better. Southern California has been awfully quiet out here. When it's hot and active to the north, this area is normally quiet. There's only a handful of earthquakes down here. Nothing above 2.5. All small microquakes. And if you look, it's only 25 earthquakes out here in the last 24 hours. Now, you may think that's a lot of earthquake activity, but these are small daily earthquakes, but this is even well below average for a daily count. In the last 30 days out here, we've had more than 1,000 earthquakes there in Southern California. So the average daily should be up around 50 or so. So it's awfully quiet. No unusual activity to note there aside from the quietness there across Southern California. Up into Yellowstone, nada. Zip zero going on. So let's go check and see what's happening there. Nothing on the seismograph stations. Pretty quiet there. I don't see anything. The earthquakes there at Yellowstone or the Idaho area have dropped off. Nothing showing up there across the Stanley, Idaho. The Sawtooth Fault system here. That's been a source of some decent swarming recently. Oil fields, nothing new. Last earthquake at 1.6 out there. New Madrid seismic zone quiet. One earthquake out around Tennessee late yesterday afternoon, a little 2.4, but main focus, I think it's areas up north here across Cascadia and the western Pacific here. Sometimes it does. I remember back in 2011, it seemed like we're having a lot more activity up here across the Cascadia as well about that time. And then a big old 9-pointer struck and actually shifted the land a whole bunch over here. And that temporarily relieved some strain out here across the West Coast for a couple years. But now we're starting to get back into it here. That's why I think something big's about ready to strike over here or over here. The rest of the globe, Puerto Rico still seeing a little bit of swarming out there. Nothing big, some 2s and 3s. Same for South America. Alaska, not a whole lot going on up there. Middle East, Mediterranean, a lot going on in political world stuff, but we'll keep that off this channel. There may have been an earthquake or two listed up here on the map from that stuff that was going on yesterday in Iran. Some movement out around the Greece area, nothing big. The Atlantic Ocean has gone awfully quiet. One earthquake there from yesterday. A quick glance at the space weather activity. We're dropping it down. I dropped my flare threats down to about 1% chance for X flare. Maybe, if we're lucky, a 40 to 45% chance for an M flare. These sunspots have just been very disappointing. They've dropped off dramatically in terms of magnetic structure complexity. This area probably about the only region that may be able to produce some M flare activity. These other areas off the globe, see ya. Out of sight, out of mind. Whether they come back into view here in a couple weeks as the same sunspot with a new name, well, we'll just have to see. Not a whole lot going on up here or further back there across the eastern limb. Let's take a look at the far side watch here real quick, see if we got anything happening. Not much. This is 2 days, well, this is now 1 day old. This area that looked like it's a large area is a large area, but it's very disorganized. We already see it there on the northeastern section of the sun. Nothing of any complexity going on. We do have this one, almost center disk of the far side of the sun. Now, whether that holds up as a complex sunspot once it comes here in a week or so, we'll check. We'll wait for it. But I don't see anything of any noteworthy sunspot activity. Now, coronal hole, Number 59, yeah, that's a pretty massive area. Got center disk here of the equator of the sun. That, that's Earth facing. So I'm expecting here, and it's a deep one too, shooting off some high-speed solar wind stream. That should amplify the conditions here for aurora activity in a few nights or so. It's really not directly lined up with Earth yet. Got maybe by tonight or tomorrow, and then it takes about 48 to 72 hours, depending on how fast this high-speed solar wind stream is flowing, to reach and interact with the planet. But right now, no major aurora activity there in the forecast for now. The moon, a little sliver of a moon out there, 12% illumination. Let's take a look here at any close approach asteroids that may be headed to the planet. Right now, let's see what we got. Well, this is today, newly discovered 17-foot car-size asteroid. Not a big deal. There's that big one coming in here. Well, that's today as well. That's a pretty big one. Don't want that to hit us. But 3 million miles away. Everything else fairly safe as well. I don't see anything of any major concern yet. Current day 1 outlook. Severe weather limited here. In a little thin line that's across down into Texas, New Mexico, all the way up into the Minnesota area, it looks like. Let's see what we got. Little chance for some tornado activity. Main threat's going to be some wind and some hail damage out there in those hatch zones. All right, aside from that, folks, watch this closely. This activity right here is very, I'm definitely thinking something big is about ready to happen here. And this is a prime region that's got some built-up strain. Again, that very visible on the oceanic crust view is that subduction zone here. I've covered this a lot, and maybe we'll cover it a little bit more in tonight's video, unless it happens before then. But that's not good. It's in a location there. You got activity just down south off of it, activity up north, putting the strain and the pressurization on this area. Reinforced by the Pacific plate, all that's pushing up on the Filipino plate and right against this area right here. So watch that closely, unless Cascadia goes. One of the two. Anyway, we'll continue to watch it. It may die off. Who knows? But it's interesting activity out there for sure, and I can't think that's good. I don't see that relieving strain out there for that subduction zone at all. And this activity there across the west coast, southern end of the Cascadia, everything going up in terms of the GPS out here. Yeah, that's not a good sign either, folks. I'm just here to present the data, present the facts. And that's all verifiable. You can check any of these sites out you want. There's the site I use for the GPS is awesome, man. There's so many GPS stations that you can look at out here. For example, Hawaii, when you look at the Kilauea volcano, they got that one's offline. There's a lot of older ones on here, but there's 2024. This right here looks like it was an instrument adjustment, I believe. Maybe not, though. Wasn't that, 2018? That was when we had that southeastern rift zone down there, or the east rift zone there in Hawaii had that big eruption activity. But we've been going up. Speaking of Hawaii real quick, I guess we better cover those and get out of here real quick and go to, where's my, down here. Episode 26 there ended a couple days ago. We should be going up in terms of inflation. But it looks like they are offline. Yep. Oh, man. Oh, no. What's going on here? It looks like they're having some website issues there at Kilauea Volcano, so let's see if I have the direct link out here. I think I do somewhere. Let's see where to go. I don't know where it's at. I got so many of these out here. I'll have to look here a little bit later, folks. But yeah, they're offline for some reason. Something's going on with that. Anyway, we'll catch you guys out here a little bit later on, folks. Keep an eye there across the Western Pacific. Keep an eye there along the Cascadia subduction zone. We'll see you guys out here a little bit later on.